Now call Deputy Jim Daly. It's 5 minutes to
Last Concord, and I welcome the opportunity to speak in the House today on the Industrial Development Bill 2013. And again, like some of my colleagues that have spoken previously, I'd like to commend the Government for bringing this bill before the House, and indeed commend the achievements of the Government to date in addressing what was identified post-election 2011 as the single greatest challenge to the country, and that was in the whole area of job creation. And as the former Speaker, Deputy English, has pointed out, to move from a situation where you were losing 7,000 jobs a month into a space where 5,000 jobs, predominantly again in the private sector, are being created, is a welcome development, and is indeed a sign that many of the efforts being made by the Government are indeed paying dividends. I often think that the ministers involved and the officials involved in the department must find it very frustrating, because their actions are never given much publicity, and there's never much dialogue about the efforts being made in there. The only thing of interest is the fruits of their labours, and I'm glad to see that the fruits of their labours have been very evident in the country, throughout the country, over the past 12 to 15 months in job announcements that have happened. I had a recent conversation with a very senior banking official, and I was querying of him at the time, from this guy had experience in running banks across the globe, and I was asking about the issue of the recession ending in the capital city, and was it going to spread out, or was there a difficulty for this country that maybe the boom would just return to the capital city at Dublin and not reach out into Cork and particularly areas that I've interest in, like West Cork. He assured me that the history of recessions has shown throughout the world that all recessions end in the capital city, and that's the first place that the boom effect has started to feel, and then it spreads out into the other cities, and from there into the regions. And again, I'm glad to note that seems to be, that prophecy is fulfilling in Ireland, as well as the recent spate of announcements in the city of Cork in the past week have shown that indeed the recession is ending there as well, and the boom is starting to happen, and recovery is very evident in Cork, and I welcome that. And my push is to see that to move further into the regions and areas like West Cork. I've been involved with a committee in West Cork called the West Cork Jobs Initiative for the last 2 years. It's made up of employers from some very notable companies that are recognised brand names nationally and internationally, such as South Western Services, Carberry Milk Products, Inchydoney Island Lodge and Spa, Southern Star, Carberry Plastics, and indeed we have a professor from UCC, Kehan Ready Mix Row Pharmaceuticals. And the CEOs of all of those companies have come together and are helping to assist in devising policy to attract jobs into a region like West Cork. And we've identified a number of challenges in the area. There's some very obvious challenges, like infrastructural challenges, like the N71 that needs to be upgraded, and regrettably was not a policy of the previous government when there was monies there to do projects like that. But I hope as our economy improves, that this government will prioritise the N71 upgrade, so that we can develop job creation stronger and more forcibly into West Cork. But what we have identified is really our future lies in SMEs. And on that issue, I would like to put on the record here my concern about some of the legislation that is being brought out, that we have to ensure that it's as favourable to SMEs as it is to larger companies. One of the issues I'd like to specifically address is redundancy payments and the changes that have been brought about by this government. And I can appreciate why it was done, and we don't want to, of course, make it too easy for larger companies to outsource their work and maybe leave off 300 or 400 people in the government, which they used to do, pay the redundancy or pay the largest share of the redundancy. That has been transferred back to the employer. But that causes a lot of problems for SMEs, and the research we have done in West Cork through the West Cork Jobs Initiative, many employers in SMEs who employ maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 people have told us that it is a blockage. There is a fear there to employing an additional person. While the economy is improving, they have capacity to take on another employee, but there is a fear about the onus on the employer to have to come up with a lump sum redundancy if things change again, and they have to let that person go in a number of years' time when the next recession hits, as sure as it will. So I think that there's a need for us to look at that and to ensure that the legislation we're bringing about is favourable, and maybe we have to bring about some changes or some twin-track legislation that would ensure SMEs are not at a disadvantage, because they are the future, as I say, in areas like West Cork, which I represent. They provide the best hope of job creation. I'm currently preparing a paper on the issue of redundancy payments, and it's something I look forward to bringing to Minister Sherlock and his colleague Minister Bruton in due course, that hopefully we can address that specific blockage to ensure, and I appreciate that we have to get the balance right in any changes that we do back to maybe spreading out the payment for redundancy. And of course there's a whole issue of legislation that surrounds that as well, and we want to ensure workers are protected and their rights are protected and that we're fair. But there is a difference between how we have to deal with workers who work in large corporations and workers who deal with in maybe SMEs that employ 2 to 3 people.